biggest assault on Beirut since Israel's latest battle with Hezbollah began. The IDF says its strikes are precise, but it's clear doctors are dying too.
There are plastic gloves on the ground, a stethoscope, an indication to us and certainly to local residents that this spot didn't have a military function.
The growing information war. Tehran releases new video apparently showing its major attack on Israel.
We see what's left of that attack and the signs of Israel's growing readiness for wars on several fronts. While here in Jerusalem, I speak to families marking the New Year holiday amid a climate of fear and uncertainty. Plus, our Africa correspondent, Youssef, goes inside a district liberated by Sudan's army in the war-torn capital.
This is a main road through northern Khartoum, and some gunfire is now going across because this bus stop is the front line.
Good evening from Beirut. All day there has been a constant drumbeat of explosions ringing out across this capital city. 9 people have been killed following a sustained aerial bombardment by the IDF on what it says are Hezbollah targets. But the casualties are not limited to those fighting. The World Health Organization says that 28 health workers have died in the last 24 hours alone. I'll be asking Lebanon's foreign minister just how dangerous a moment this is for his country and for the wider region. Stay with us for that live interview. First, though, over the last 24 hours, the Israeli Air Force has continued its aerial campaign targeting what it says is Hezbollah capabilities in southern Lebanon with multiple strikes. Today, 3 large consecutive explosions were heard in Hezbollah-controlled Dahir in southern Beirut. Sky's data and forensics team has verified the location of 2 airstrikes to that suburb. One of those airstrikes hit an apartment building. Our international correspondent John Sparks has been at the scene of the strikes and sent us this report.
In central Beirut, we found the contents of the 3rd floor of an apartment block scattered in the streets. An office chair, a high-vis vest, packages of scrubs and surgical gowns. This place was supposed to be safe.
I don't feel safe at all. This is a war of destruction, a war against the people, against freedom, against the cultural life of the Lebanese.
The Israelis struck 200 targets in Lebanon overnight. These blasts recorded in Beirut's southern suburbs. But the city center is generally left alone. What was the Israeli military trying to destroy then, above the shisha shop on Bashura Street? The 3rd floor was used by paramedics and first responders from a group called Islamic Health Society. It's linked to Hezbollah, but offers services to everyone. A group of paramedics were asleep, we were told, when the missiles struck.
There is plenty of evidence here that this civil defense center was a civil defense center. Have a look at this. There are plastic gloves on the ground, a stethoscope, different types of bandages, that sort of thing. An indication to us and certainly to local residents that this spot didn't have a military function.
No warning was given before the strike and no explanation provided afterwards by Israel. It's an outrage, said a Hezbollah MP.
Unless a decisive decision is being taken by the international community to stop this Israeli killing machine, you're going to witness more and more. And we have no alternative but to fight back, to defend our people and to protect them. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
A few kilometers to the south, Israel has been pounding the suburbs, like the district of Dahir. It says Hezbollah stores and manufactures weapons here, but residents don't believe it.
This used to be a garage, and that was a spy shop. There's nothing here. They just give us excuses. There's nothing here to justify the bombing.
Amongst today's targets, Hezbollah's media office, which took a contingent of journalists, including Sky News, on a tour of Dahia yesterday. Its military wing and its message, both under attack. The strike on this centre, a breach of international law, says the EU's top diplomat, as 28 medics die in the last 24 hours, according to the UN. It seems the health of the nation is under attack.
And just some news coming in from Palestinian health authorities on the West Bank, and they are saying that 14 people have been killed in an Israeli strike. No word at the moment from the Israelis. John Sparks is here with me now, and I'm just being told in my ear actually that the Israeli authorities have confirmed that strike. We'll get more on that just as we can. So John, I mean, your report, it just suggests a sense of real gloom descending upon this city.
I think that's right. I mean, I think Beirut is well and truly on the front line now in this conflict. The intensity of the bombardment is increasing. The geographical spread of the bombardment is increasing rapidly as well. There were sites 30, 35 kilometers north of the city that were hit today for the first time. And we've had the second attack now in the center of the city, this medical facility that hosted paramedics and first responders belonging to an organization with links to Hezbollah. That facility was just meters away from the Lebanese parliament, wasn't very far from the British embassy, from a big UN building as well. And within that apartment block, you had hundreds of IDPs as well. We forget that 1.2 million people have been forced out of their homes, and a lot of people have come, quite naturally, to Beirut, to the center of Beirut, and they are in buildings like that building. We found out through our conversations during the day that there were upwards of 20 people in each apartment building. So, you know, it comes as a huge shock. People thought they were safe there, safer than, say, the southern suburbs. We keep hearing about this district, Dahir, which is administered and controlled by Hezbollah. People thought they were safe there. Now they're feeling really vulnerable.
Why do you think it is intensifying now?
That is a good question, and that has got everything to do with the Israeli military plan here. I mean, the Israelis, they've got a whole lot of international stick today, condemnation from the World Health Organization, for example. They say healthcare in this country is under attack. 37 health facilities, they say, have been closed in southern Lebanon. 3 hospitals fully evacuated in Beirut. 2 hospitals in Beirut semi-evacuated. The IDF have come back, and they have said that they carried out 15 strikes today. I can tell you that they have just served warnings on 2 more strikes just in the last few minutes. In Dahir, in the southern suburbs, we will likely hear something from those sites in about an hour's time. That's how much time people living in those areas get. But the IDF have said precise intelligence. We're going after weapon stores and weapon manufacturing facilities embedded underneath residential buildings. But in central Beirut, all we saw at ground level was a large shisha shop dusting off their shisha pipes. And that is something else about Beirut. You know, people get on with things when they can.
Okay, John, thank you very much indeed. Well, Israel claims to be carrying out precision strikes, but aid workers and health workers, as John was saying there, have been caught up in the violence. 4 members of the Lebanese Red Cross were injured in one strike. The Director General of the World Health Organization has said 28 health workers have been killed in Lebanon in the last 24 hours.
Health and humanitarian workers, including WHO staff, have done incredible work under very difficult and dangerous conditions with limited supplies. And yet, healthcare continues to come under attack. In Lebanon alone, 28 health workers have been killed in the last 24 hours. WHO calls for a de-escalation of the conflict, for healthcare to be protected and not attacked, for access routes to be secured and supplies delivered, and for a ceasefire, a political solution, and peace. The best medicine is peace.
Well, I'm joined now by Dr. Youssef Bakhache, head of the Lebanese Order of Physicians, the largest medical organization in Lebanon. Good evening. Thank you for being here. What was it? 28 medics killed in 24 hours. These are these are terrible numbers.
Yes, it's terrible, catastrophic number, and it is not new. The healthcare workers have been targeted since October 2023, and till now we have at least lost around 100 of them, with 3 doctors. They were killed during their work in the hospital and the emergency department and in a primary healthcare sector. Of course, since September 17, numbers are increasing. And of course, we have a lot of injured and tens and hundreds of injured people, nurses, technicians, doctors. So it's really hard for the medical community and the medical system to sustain and to work in these terrible environment.
And you say targeted, being targeted.
Yes, because it was in the south and they were working, transporting people, and we all remember ambulances were targeted. So we hope that if we can keep all the medical community away from this conflict, to keep these people in the white coat continue helping and treating these injured civilians, keeping them away of this conflict, to continue giving their mission and their treatment and their services.
You see, Israel claims hospitals are being used by Hezbollah to keep weapons and equipment. What is your response to that?
No, I think it's wrong allegations. As I know, I know all hospitals in Lebanon because we were involved with the doctors, with the medical communities. I don't think that hospitals are used as warehouses for bombs. I think it's true allegations, and we are living the same situation as a few months ago in Gaza.
Right. I mean, how are you coping? The medical system here is under pressure at the best of times. How are you coping with this?
If we want to talk about the hospitals, of course, we are living a very, very challenging times, particularly not from now. It had started with the economic crisis. But what is positive and amazing that since September 17, when we had these large numbers of casualties and injured people, hospitals reacted really in a good way. They opened their doors to receive people and to treat them. It was really nice with all the doctors who in 4 hours they admitted more than 2,400 people. And last Monday, 23, when the airstrikes started to bomb Beirut and all over Lebanon, and when we had in only 12 hours more than 1,500 injuries, so hospitals, and particularly in the south, of course, were flooded with people, with casualties. It was really hard because in that day, it was impossible to transport people to Beirut because all the road was blocked by the refugees. So, so hospital reacted well, and now they are ready. They are still ready to receive more casualties because we are working with the Ministry of Health on absorbing the shock, on treating people, and on diverting them to other structures in order to keep those hospitals free. And for example, in the south of Beirut, we have decided to evacuate 3 hospitals from the cold patients in order to keep them working for the casualties and.
Good. Well, listen, Dr. Bakhache, thank you very much for coming in, and I wish you luck with your work. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, in the last few moments, we have heard more explosions behind us here in Beirut. Just let's have a look and have a listen. So that is the scene here in Beirut this evening. It's been a day of, well, many explosions here in the capital city. We'll have more from Lebanon shortly, and I'll be speaking to the country's foreign minister. But for now, over to Anna in Jerusalem.
Yes, and good evening from Jerusalem. As the world waits for Israel's next move today, Iran released video apparently showing the huge arsenal of weapons it fired at Israel just over 48 hours ago. Our security and defence editor Deborah Haynes is in northern Israel and sent this report.
A message of defiance from Iran, vowing victory. Also plastered on the side of missiles, images of the political leader of Hamas and the head of Hezbollah, both killed in Israeli strikes. The video released by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard purports to show last Tuesday's revenge attack on Israel, edited with a religious song used at times of war. Impossible to tell if these were the actual strikes. But the aim seems to be to demonstrate Iran's firepower in a fight where words and images are as much of a weapon as bullets and bombs. Despite the impression of destruction, Israel has insisted most of the incoming fire was intercepted. This is what's left of one of the missiles, shot down over open ground in the south. Yet satellite imagery suggests an Israeli airbase did suffer a hit. This was the site on Sunday, and again on Wednesday. A building on the right appears to have been damaged. The United States helped to defend Israel's skies from the onslaught. Its president was asked if he would allow Israel to strike back.
We don't allow Israel, we advise Israel, and there's nothing going to happen today. We'll talk about that later.
As the world waits to see how Israel will respond, its forces are already fighting on multiple other fronts against groups aligned with Iran. The biggest battle right now is across the border in Lebanon, where ground troops are locked in an offensive against Hezbollah. Israel's air defences are playing a key role in this war too. Here they respond to incoming Hezbollah fire. The threat to communities across the north is why Israel says it's fighting in Lebanon. An elderly woman lives in this house in a town a few miles back from the border. A rocket landed last week just as she stepped inside and out of danger. Her son is helping to tidy up. How is she?
She is a strong woman.
The local security chief says it's about time Israel went on the attack.
We are fighting here and we are protecting our home. We'll fight, even if we need, we will die for it, and we will win.
It's why Israel is pushing more troops into Lebanon. But this is tough terrain and a risky mission that's only part of a much wider war.
Well, Deborah joins me now from the border between Israel and Lebanon. And Deborah, Hezbollah putting up a fight, Israeli combat deaths we've heard about, incoming fire into Israel. In fact, an update from the IDF suggesting approximately 230 projectiles have been fired by Hezbollah into Israel. Signs of another grinding conflict there, while the Iran retaliation decision awaits.
Yes, and I mean that projectile number is, that's the highest in one day that we've seen since the ground incursion started. And we've been here. And today it was noticeable in terms of just how much higher the rate of the air defence systems intercepting these rocket strikes and the number of times that the air raid siren around this area went off. That's some outgoing. We've just heard a helicopter above and we saw it launching some kind of munitions into Lebanon, which is just over in the distance. All the signs of the fact that this war is at the same time.
Yes, Deborah, apologies. We're losing your sound there. Perhaps return to you a little bit later, Deborah, on the border for us this evening. Well, do stay with us on The World. Coming up, Joe Biden doesn't rule out Israeli strikes on Iranian oil facilities. We'll discuss if there's any chance of tensions with a former US...
I'm Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's chief North of England correspondent. I've reported from around the world and around the UK.
I'm Mark Stone, I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. And beyond the United States, from across the world, I report on the biggest stories.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I remember some of the worst of the violence here.
I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Well, welcome back to Jerusalem, where people are celebrating Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. It is an important holiday in Israel, observed by many, and seen as a time to visit relatives and to reflect on past months. This year, though, the mood is couldn't be further from jubilant, as I found out. A family coming together for Jewish New Year. But the festivities are quiet and they are reeling. 2 days ago, in the hours before Iran attacked Israel, their close friend was among the victims of the Hamas attack on the Tel Aviv suburb, Jaffa.
We take my family down to the shelter, and the people with the guards kill my neighbors, and I very afraid.
It feels different. As you can see, everything is empty over here. It's usually very crowded, a lot of people.
The synagogue provides solace for Dan and Shulamit Levy, newly settled in Israel from the UK. For them, it is the uncertainty each day of knowing if their two sons have been recalled to the army.
It's impossible to make plans at the moment. It's minute by minute.
The celebrations this year have been very muted. We are praying at the same time as our children and grandchildren are serving in the army, and it's very emotional to pray this year because the words take on an extra significance because they're real.
The traditions kept alive, the shofar, the ram's horn blown, but these are different times. The Azeri family, though, visiting their grandmother for the holidays, are unbowed.
I don't feel fear.
Even if Israel retaliates against Iran and Iran fires back, you don't feel afraid?
No. I feel that Israel is strong. We have a good friends, England, America. We feel secure.
No, we're not afraid, actually. We're living for a long time like that. And this is our country, and we need to fight for it. And we don't have another place to go.
The people of Israel, they're living in a sort of stasis of anxiety for nearly a year now. Well, we've been waiting for any indication about an Israeli retaliation to Iran's attack. It's been accepted by most as when and a not if scenario. President Biden was asked about what he knows. Have a listen.
Will you let Israel retaliate? What are the plans to allow Israel to strike back against Iran?
First of all, we don't allow Israel. We advise Israel, and there's nothing going to happen today. We'll talk about that later. We're in discussion with that. I think that would be a little anyway.
Well, I'm joined now by Frank Lowenstein, a former US Special Envoy for Israeli-Palestinian Negotiations. Good to have you on. Joe Biden there saying any retaliation won't come today. The Pentagon, in its briefing, suggesting it's been discussing the retaliation with Israel. What would the US intention be right now to put a brake on what Israel does, to hold them back, do you think?
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do is to persuade them that we can include a very strong set of sanctions against Iran that will be part of will be an overall severe response. I think what we're most concerned about is probably that Israel will strike the nuclear facilities in Iran, because that will definitely result in an escalation, a heavy response from the Iranians that would head us on the path towards escalation rather than de-escalation. Obviously, the oil refineries are another big issue. The last thing Harris and Biden need right now is higher gas prices with an election 1 month away. So a lot of different things we're balancing there.
Well, the call for calm and cool heads we've heard endlessly, haven't we? The big fear for many people is if Israel chooses to target Iranian nuclear facilities, what impact would that have? And could the US stop that?
Well, I think we have more leverage over the Israelis when it comes to issues related to Iran than we do on Gaza or Lebanon, where I don't think they listen to us at all on those fronts. But they really need our help on Iran, especially if there's an Iranian response. We're obviously playing a strong role in helping to intercept missiles. So I think we'll be using that leverage as much as we can to sort of encourage the Israelis to be restrained in their response. So hopefully we can set this on a path towards de-escalation. If Israel just strikes military sites in Iran, no civilian casualties, no damage to civilian infrastructure, I think we believe that there's a path where the Iranians would not actually respond and then we could move on to trying to resolve the issues in Lebanon and then hopefully Gaza.
Well, the G7 leaders have held a call, a huge statement from them, lamenting the state we're in, a dangerous cycle, they warned, of attacks and retaliations, risking fueling uncontrollable escalation in the Middle East. I mean, all your years of working in negotiation in this region, how would you categorize where we're at, the sort of precipitous state this area is in?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're really on a knife's edge there. This is as dangerous of a situation as I've ever seen, the closest we've ever been, really, to a full-blown regional war, to a direct exchange of ballistic missiles between Israel and Iran, which is the sort of Armageddon scenario. So we're working as hard as we possibly can, the president and his entire team, to really encourage the Israelis to de-escalate this rather than escalate it. And then I think by the same token, we've been working very hard with anybody who has any influence over Iran, Russia, China, others, to try to get them to see the path towards de-escalation if Israel gives them that opportunity. And I don't think anybody believes Iran really wants a regional war here. So I think the hope is that if we can keep Israel's response sort of contained, then we may be able to move past this very, very dangerous moment.
Well, you say that. I mean, it feels like a failure of diplomacy, doesn't it? Tonight, a bomb dropped in a Palestinian refugee camp in the middle of the West Bank, multiple deaths there. We're seeing what's happening in South Lebanon. The Houthi situation has not calmed down. 41,000 deaths in Gaza, and we sit here waiting for retaliation on Iran. There is no calming down that we see.
You're quite right, and I don't think this has been a successful U.S. diplomatic effort over the course of the last year necessarily. I think the hope is now we will reach the peak of violence, the peak of fighting between Israel and Iran, and that if we can settle that down, I think Hezbollah is willing to move back to the Litani River if the Israelis will stop their assaults on the various weapon sites and obviously the ground incursion, and then hopefully that could give a little bit of momentum towards resolving the situation in Gaza, although I think that's probably the hardest of the three right now.
And how do you see the US election having an impact on this? Pretty much a month away, both in terms of what's happening now and impotence, if you like, with the Biden administration, and on the other hand, some concerns about if Trump came in.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question over here right now. Everything is about the presidential campaign in one way or the other. And there's competing interests for the Biden administration. Obviously, there's a big Arab American population in one of the most critical states of Michigan. And they get very, very angry when it feels like we're just facilitating the Israelis, putting their friends and relatives in the midst of a humanitarian nightmare. So we have that on the one hand. On the other hand, we really don't want to fight with the Israelis a month before the election either. And I think that's the balancing act that the Vice President Harris has been trying to get.
Do you feel any optimism at all?
Not in the short term. I think we're going to see an Israeli response and then hope for the best with respect to what Iran does following that. And then in Lebanon, I think we're at least a week or two away from any kind of meaningful ceasefire negotiations. But I do think there's a glimmer of hope that after this, the worst will be over, and we may be able to set this conflict on a different kind of path going forward. But as you point out, we really have very limited leverage over the Israelis right now. So in a lot of ways, as President Biden himself said, we're really just trying to persuade them to do what we think is in their interest and ours.
Frank Lowenstein, good to have your thoughts there, former negotiator. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.
Well, do stay with us on The World. Coming up after the break, Sudan's human catastrophe. Sky News is given Frontline access to areas of the capital Khartoum, previously been deemed as a no-go zone where communities have been pulled apart. Stay tuned for that.
this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
You want a job in a normal life?
Why are these homes empty? I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Welcome back to Jerusalem. We'll have more on the situation here and in Lebanon shortly. But now I want to turn our attention to the crisis in Sudan. Millions of people have been displaced due to fighting across the country, with the 18-month siege of the capital, Khartoum, leading to hundreds of thousands fleeing the city. Well, Khartoum has been at the centre of the devastating war, which broke out between army forces and a paramilitary rebel group called the Rapid Support Forces in April last year. The RSF has held on to Khartoum City and Khartoum North for 18 months as the Sudanese armed forces made gains across the river in Omdurman. In the past few days, the army crossed the White Nile Bridge, entering the heart of the capital, where battles are ongoing. They've also moved east, crossing Halfaya Bridge, and are fighting to reclaim territory in neighbourhoods in Khartoum North. Well, our Africa correspondent, Israeli-Palestinian and her team have gained frontline access to areas of the city which had previously been deemed no-go zones. Here is her report.
An impossible crossing made possible. A deadly impasse now passable. After a year and a half of war, Sudan's army is finally reclaiming territory across the Nile.
This bridge was no man's land. Civilians couldn't cross it. The military couldn't cross it. But since it's fallen under the army's control, the pathway between Omdurman and the north of Khartoum has now been opened.
This is Khartoum North, known as Bahri, one of the 3 cities of the capital, partly liberated but left in ruins.
This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. The most basic things, a car, a chair, everything is just turned over.
But for now, the damage feels immaterial, eclipsed by soldiers celebrating victory. Not just for a strip of land, but for entering a new era in their fight against the RSF. And for some of them, the joy of coming home. It's a beautiful feeling to come to where you're from after a year and a half, he says. How did your family react when you called them? I ask. They were in tears. They couldn't believe I made it. We moved deeper into the devastated neighborhoods, looking for the few families that couldn't flee. Faiza is still trembling from everything her family has endured. Trapped in a nightmare of RSF terror.
It was hell. No one can imagine how we were living.
She says RSF soldiers kept barging into their home, each time with a different demand.
He shot the ground and asked for gold. I begged him and said I have nothing. He asked me to choose who he would kill, my son or my niece. I locked my 12-year-old daughter in the bathroom so he wouldn't rape her like the neighbor's daughters. If I had a single coin, enough money to get out of here, I would leave this country and never come back. After all we've been through.
They still live with the gunfire, but now it's outgoing. Their whole area, an army defense position. And all around them are the empty homes of their neighbors, overturned and stripped of material value. The fight is far from over. RSF snipers and rocket launchers are pounding the edges of this pocket.
This is a main road through northern Khartoum, and some gunfire is now going across because this bus stop is the front line. And given the nature of urban warfare, they expect that anywhere beyond this point, they can find the enemy.
More soldiers move in as we move out from a part of the capital that's finally free from its siege, but still gripped by a war that's tearing Sudan apart.
And Yusra joins me now from Khartoum State. And Yusra, it is so clear to see the trauma of war from your pictures. And this pocket taken by the army, is this a sign of their greater ambition to reclaim more territory?
The army have made it very clear, Anna, that this is just the beginning of their push into the heart of the capital, into Khartoum city, where battles were raging throughout the day. We could hear them from where we are in Durman, in the northeastern area of the capital. It's been such a momentous moment for them, and you can tell they're trying to keep that momentum going. They're trying to keep morale high with sort of this victory lap around the area that we're in, on trucks with speakers blasting music, trying to cling on to the faith that they feel like they've restored, that people now feel that they can rely on them to liberate the capital. But even though they have done that, there's still a long way to go. I mean, the RSF are deeply entrenched in the heart of the capital. They've got snipers in tall buildings that have a 360 view of the three cities of the capital, and they are fighting a very, very familiar force. I mean, they train them, they know them very well, and they're now opponents in an arena that was home to millions of people. Khartoum, the capital in general, was the biggest city in the Sahel, the most populated city in the Sahel. And the people that lived here, those who did flee to neighboring countries, to states across Sudan, to countries further away, are really, many of them are hoping that they can come back. But as you saw in our report, what they will come back to is a devastated city, is people, neighbors who are deeply, deeply traumatized by what they experienced at the hands of the RSF.
Yeah, I mean, it's been truly devastating, hasn't it? Any signs at all of it ending?
I mean, international intervention has so far failed to bring even a single ceasefire, Anna. In over a year and a half, there hasn't been a lull in fighting. There hasn't been consistent humanitarian access to besieged areas in the capital. There seems to be really no end in sight. Peace talks, US-led peace talks in August, came to quite a disappointing end, with a lot of people feeling like it enabled the UAE as a sort of neutral observer when the UAE is credibly accused of supporting the RSF in this war. There are a lot of global players involved in this. Russia is backing the army officially. Moscow is backing the army. But Wagner troops have been training and working with RSF soldiers for many years now. We've seen Qatar involved, Turkey, Egypt, those countries backing the army. But we've also seen the UAE, again, accused, though they deny it, of backing the RSF. So this is a geopolitical war. There are lots of actors, state actors, who want to have a stake in Sudan and want to be a part of the next era, even if it means the country is torn apart in the process.
Yusra, with that extraordinary access to Khartoum. Thank you. Well, that's it for now from Jerusalem. I'll be back for Sky News at 10. Now over to Mark once again in Beirut.
Anna, thank you very much indeed. Stay with us on The World. Coming up after the break, more airstrikes tonight here in Beirut. We'll have the very latest.
We're rolling.
Welcome to The World.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country.
It's ours, and we're going to take it back.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power. Now, freedom! There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes, torrential rain and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued with its ultimatum to the people of Ashkelon, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous.
We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win. Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Beirut, and tonight there have been yet more explosions here in the capital city of Lebanon. Just have a listen to this. So another night of Israeli strikes on Beirut, and Israel is showing no sign of letting up, attacking what it describes as Hezbollah terrorist targets. John Sparks, I was promising you actually a little earlier we'd be talking to the Lebanese foreign minister, but he's stuck in traffic, unfortunately. John Sparks, therefore, is with me, top substitute. But, I mean, it has been just the most intense 24 hours of strikes in this city.
It really has. I mean, even while you've been on air, we had a couple of warnings posted by the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, saying people in these areas, these specific buildings in Dahir, in the southern suburbs, you need to leave now. That means what, about half an hour to get out, and then we heard the inevitable thumps over in the distance. It says something about Beirut, doesn't it? This city, this incredibly diverse, chaotic city, it is on the front line now, isn't it? It's part of the battlefield in this conflict.
I mean, as so often in the past.
Yes, yeah.
You know, civil war, invasion, and now this economic crisis.
Yeah, I mean, we are now witnessing the fourth incursion, fourth invasion in the last 50 years by the Israelis. The intensity of the bombardment here in Beirut is going up. The geographical spread of the bombardment is going up. Targets north of the city, about 25, 30 kilometers north of the city, struck for the first time. And we've had the second strike in the center of the city as well on this facility, this medical facility hosting paramedics and first responders run by a Islamic medical charity. The thing about that facility is that it is really close to the Lebanese Parliament building and the British Embassy and a large UN compound as well. I think that says to people, what's safe, you know, what's off limits in this city, and arguably there is nowhere now. I think that's what is coming across to people. And the thing about the center of the city is you've got so many IDPs packed in there as well.
Or displaced people, yeah.
Displaced people. Yeah. Now estimated to be over 1.2 million people in this country over the course of 2 weeks have been forced out of their homes. That would test any country in the world, let alone a country with a non-functioning government, with a caretaker government. It's extraordinary, and there are tens of thousands of people packed in the center of Beirut right now, in the place where this medical facility was struck. We know from talking to residents there on the ground, there were, in some of those apartments, there were upwards of 20 people packed in there. It's scary, and people feel vulnerable.
Just going to interrupt you for a moment, because we were talking a little bit earlier, or I was talking a little bit earlier, about this Israeli strike on the West Bank. Yeah. We now have some pictures of that strike, and the Palestinian Health Ministry is reporting that at least 14 people have been killed in that strike on Tulkarm refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. So it's clear this is a war now the Israelis are pursuing on so many fronts.
So many fronts, and receiving unprecedented criticism and condemnation for it. I mean, I think really interesting that we have heard from the EU's top diplomat about this strike in the center of the city. He said it was a breach of international humanitarian law. We've heard from the Director General of the World Health Organization. Very strong language from him this evening, saying that healthcare in Lebanon is under attack. 37 healthcare facilities have been closed in southern Lebanon, 28 medics killed in 24 hours. 3 hospitals in Beirut have been evacuated, 2 partially evacuated. I mean, the stuff hits home internationally. The IDF have also come out with a response. They said that they had carried out 15 strikes today in Beirut. We'll have to put that number up a bit after what we've heard over the last hour. Yeah. They say, we've heard it before from them, precise intelligence, right. Weapon stores, weapon factories, under buildings. They're not going to stop.
And of course, we wait to the decision, the Israeli decision on a response to the Iranian attack, whenever that may come. So it's a region in a state of real tension at the moment. John, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So that is about it for the world this evening. We'll have much more from here in Beirut over the coming days. Anna will be here next with News at 10. That will be live from Jerusalem. From all of us here in Beirut, good night.